Welcome in the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. We're on Spotify, we're on Podbean, we're on Google Podcasts, we're on Apple Podcasts. We're also on Dash Radio every single weeknight at 7 p.m. on their Nothing But Net channel. Also, check out the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. What are you missing if you're not subscribing? The group is on the 5th hour of a free agent stream as we're speaking. Had at one point as many as 2,000 live viewers, and it stayed over 1,500 pretty much the entire night. Plus, you get all of our other coverage throughout the South Florida sports scene, including the Dolphins, the Hurricanes, and everything else. So make sure that you're subscribing. Get us over that 15,000 subscriber mark. Also, check out 5reasonsports.com, where we've got the wonder kid Brady Hawk writing daily articles there on the Heat, sometimes twice daily articles. But also, we've got Louis Sung, Juan Cardona, Alfredo Arteaga, and all the other guys that are out at Dolphins camp. And we have no paywall. Also, check out the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. So many of our sponsors are local, based right here in South Florida, and that includes CPT of South Florida. That's right. It's right there in the name. If you're looking for help with your IT, with your information technology, you've got to reach out to CPT of South Florida. They've been providing small and medium businesses with the technology they need for decades. They specialize in cloud-hosted phone systems and managed IT. If you own a small or medium business and you're looking to save money on your monthly phone and internet costs, you got to give our guy TJ a call right now. Actually, I'm going to introduce TJ to you on an upcoming pod. He sat down with me for a couple of minutes to explain the business. The best I can tell you is that people are happy with it when we send them to him. So he's been helping South Florida businesses save thousands per month, and he can do the same for you with a cloud phone system. You can work from anywhere on any device. For a free in-person consultation, call our guy TJ at 954-966-2766. That's 954-966-2766. If you call now, there's a promotion that includes 25% off cloud phone service, including free phones and the first 2 months of service free. Free phones and 2 months of service free, and 25% off cloud phone service. Deal with an owner, not a sales rep. Give TJ at CPT a call. Again, that's 954-966-2766, or the website CPT, that's cpt-florida.com. And now, tonight's free agent episode.
Down the Biscayne. Yeah. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Buck said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing, got it all band. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back on 5 on the Floor. Here's the floor plan. It's now 10:18 Eastern on free agency night. Free agency officially opened a little over 4 hours ago. We're going to give you our instant reactions and get this podcast up on the 5 on the Floor feed. By the time we're done, we'll probably jump on that other stream that's still going. But there may be things that happen between the time that we post this and you hear it. So we're going to try not to do a ton of speculation on this podcast, although we will do a little bit, but we're going to do a lot of kind of what's happened already. So here's the news so far if you've missed it. As we predicted, as a lot of people predicted by the time we got close to it, Kyle Lowry is a member of the Miami Heat. He's being sent from the Toronto Raptors to the Heat in a sign and trade that we're expecting to include Goran Dragic. Of course, the Heat opted into his contract for $19 million. We knew when that happened that he would not be back. His contract is being used to acquire Kyle Lowry, along with the rights to Precious Achiuwa, of course, Miami's first-round pick last year, who we told you about 5 months ago that Toronto liked. They still liked him. He ends up being the piece that Toronto picks up because we don't expect Dragic to stay in Toronto. And Greg Sylvander, who along with Alex Toledo are the two with me on this podcast, has reported that Goran really doesn't want to play anywhere other than Dallas now that he can't go back to Miami. And so we'll see how that plays out because he's got to be bought out or it's got to be some kind of a three-way deal. So Achiuwa, we're also hearing, I know Miami Heat Beat reported this first, that possibly a second-round pick could be going to Toronto. But essentially, to make the money work, to get Kyle Lowry somewhere close to $90 million, we don't believe it is $90 million, although that's been reported elsewhere, over 3 years, Dragic and Precious are the guys that are going. later in the night, after the Miami Heat made offers to a bunch of stretch big types. We heard about Markieff Morris. I know Barry Jackson reported that. Nick Batum, Jeff Green, who they didn't offer as much to as Denver did. He ended up going to Denver. And a few other guys they were in play for. They end up signing PJ Tucker to 2 years at $15 million. PJ, a guy that they've looked at for many years. We always talk about the Heat cycle back to the same guys. People made fun of me for saying they should give up a first-round pick for PJ last year. Well, PJ is now a member of the Miami Heat, and Alex is very happy because this was the guy that Alex wanted. They also were in on Bobby Portis, although they didn't end up getting him. And Bobby Portis, who is a favorite of our colleague Adam Barai, ends up going back to Milwaukee for pretty measly sum, relatively speaking, of 2 years at $9 million. So far for the Heat, out Dragic, Precious. Kendrick Nunn not out to this point. We haven't heard a whole lot about him, although there is interest. We've heard from Detroit and some other teams, but nothing's happened to this point. Oladipo is still on the roster. And of course, the other move is that Duncan Robinson was retained for an average of $18 million a year. If you've listened to Five on the Floor for the last year, that would sound like a familiar number. 5 years, $90 million. They retain Duncan Robinson. The only other bit of news, and Shams reported this first, but we've also talked about this on Five on the Floor ad nauseum. Jimmy Butler, as expected, will get the max extension and not a penny or year less. Greg, immediate reaction to what they did tonight. I know people are going to want to ask about DeMar DeRozan. We'll get into it as we speak. It's not dead. By the time we finish it, maybe, but right now it's not. Greg, immediate reaction to the additions of Lowry, Tucker, subtraction, Dragic, Precious, Nunn still out there, Oladipo still out there, Ariza gone to Los Angeles. How do you feel about all this?
Pat Riley said on that Zoom call, we know what we need to do. And I feel like there were some definite holes that were addressed today. Kyle Lowry is obviously the slam dunk addition in terms of just the things that he brings. I think it was the perfect fit. So I don't need to wax poetic there. As they shuffled around with the big men that you referenced that they made glancing offers to, I heard Bobby Portis's offer came in similar to what the PJ Tucker offer. It's almost like they offered that contract to both those guys and said, which one of you is going to take it? And it turned out that it's PJ Tucker. And that surprised me a bit because I really thought that they were going to continue to keep the mid-level exception open and that money available for DeMar DeRozan in case that materializes. But it looks like they just could not pass on PJ Tucker. And I like that. I like the fact that they went and got a guy that, to me, fills that Jay Crowder role. Maybe not from a shooting perspective, like he's not going to hit 7 threes in a game. That's just not him. But he's going to give you the defensive stuff, the proven veteran leadership, the fiery kind of like not going to get pushed around bulldog mentality. So I really like that a lot. And then obviously Duncan, we wanted to keep him around. If you're going to have this kind of team, you need a shooter like him. He's locked in that 5th year. There's some non-guarantees associated with it that have yet to be completely publicized. So overall, it's a good start for Miami.
All right, Alex, we'll get into the concerns that Heat fans have, and I think some of them are legitimate, and I think we should kind of go through them at some point, recognizing that they're not finished, okay? But just the 2 moves on their own, the type of team that this constructs, because we know that Lowry and Tucker are going to be in the starting lineup most likely. We know Lowry is, likely Tucker, and they're both probably going to be in the closing lineup.
I have breaking news. Dewayne Dedmon has agreed to a 1-year deal to return to the Miami Heat per Shams.
That's a big move. And we tweeted about this right before we came in that they needed to retain him. Okay, so they've added their backup big now. They have 3 tough guys that they've added tonight or retained, right? I mean, Lowry, Tucker, and then retaining Dedmon. I tweeted that this reminded me, Pat Riley, when he took over in New York, the marketing department in New York wanted to do a New York glitzy type promotional campaign because they had the guy from Showtime coming in, and Pat, the guy from Showtime, said, no, I want chalk outlines for Anthony Mason and John Starks and Patrick Ewing and Charles Oakley. This is that kind of team, Alex. I know there are concerns about the other side of the ball, but how do you see the pieces fitting so far?
Look, man, it's hard to really look at what they've done today, especially now that we've gotten a little bit more of a clearer picture of how they're going to look, because it was starting to get a little bit weird there with the power forward stuff. Like I think people were starting to get a little bit antsy as guys starting to sign with other teams, and I just can't really be anything but over the moon about how today went. First of all, we can't emphasize enough, and look, I know that you guys have reported this and it's kind of been known for about a day now, but this has been done, but it getting announced, there being no problems, right? Like we knew that Dallas and New Orleans kind of got in there last second, trying to offer more money, and that's the type of thing that could get somebody to change their mind, as we learned with LaMarcus Aldridge earlier this season. So first of all, getting Kyle Lowry, slam dunk. We had it first. Kyle Lowry is a slam dunk, hand in glove fit for what the Heat needed on offense and defense from a personality standpoint. Is a Jimmy guy and is also a Bam guy. It's an incredible fit. We don't even got to talk about that any more than that. PJ Tucker is really exactly what they needed from a four. And yes, there's offensive concerns, but also there's no concerns in PJ Tucker's mind. He knows exactly where he has to be on offense, and it's going to be stationed in the corners. He's going to have a similar role to Jay, like Leif said there. And I think he's an upgrade on defense because he can really guard up for you. And I think better than Jay could. Right. And we all love Jay Crowder here. I would still, I would definitely take Jay Crowder back on the Heat. Right. Like there's no doubt about it. But PJ Tucker, what he provides for the Heat there, a team that we saw can be lacking size versus bigger teams, specifically the Bucks. Like he is somebody who can guard multiple types of guys, whether it's threes, fours, or fives. And we know he's mostly going to be used to guard like front court guys. And that's really what they need. They're just small at most positions. And although Lowry isn't necessarily tall or lengthy, they got bigger at point guard today too. Bringing back Duncan, another slam dunk. Like they got him at a pretty reasonable cost compared to some of the numbers that were getting put out there over the last month. I think everything today went perfect. Like, especially now, if you find out Dedmon got the minimum, even if he got the biannual, I think that's great that you got the backup five thing solved. And all of a sudden you're just a lot closer to having this team filled out. It's a slam dunk.
So, and I know, I mean, these three moves were kind of the three moves you wanted, because you wanted to keep Duncan, you wanted to bring in Tucker,
my checklist,
and you wanted Lowry, and we'll get to
Bobby thing. They teased me, but I love it, man. It's like Christmas for me.
We'll get to some concerns here in a second. But the one thing that was, to me, the biggest point that I've made about Lowry here from the beginning, other than the fact that this is what Jimmy wanted, which is you have to take care of your star in this day and age, is that his numbers did not decline last year. I think there's some misconceptions about that because he missed time. Remember, Toronto really wasn't trying. They were sent to Tampa. The season got away from them pretty quickly, and Masai basically decided to shut it down to large degrees. So, I mean, that's the first thing. His efficiency numbers were actually better than his career averages by a lot, actually. I mean, 44% may not seem like a lot, but it's pretty good for Kyle Lowry, and he was close to 40% from three, while shooting close to 90% from the line. I think one thing that's being overlooked, the two guys are going to have the ball in their hands the most at the end of games. Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry are very good free throw shooters. That is going to be helpful for them at the end of the games. And we know about the defense that both of those guys bring, and you can put them on the floor with Bam and Tucker. You've got 4 of your 5 spots covered defensively at the end of the games, where if Duncan even makes slight improvement, he can play with them and be covered up. We're going to get to some of the concerns in a second, and I do want to get to the DeRozan situation, which is still kind of sitting out there. But before we do, I want to tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. It's our friends over at Everything Trade Shows. They're based right here in Fort Lauderdale, but they service all 50 states. You can schedule a free consultation. If you mention 5 Reasons, you'll get a free booth rendering. Go to everythingtradeshows.com. Again, COVID is not over. We know about the Delta variant, but the trade shows are still going on, and maybe you don't have your entire staff back yet. They can help you. They can do the whole thing for you, the logistics, the booth, the graphics, the furniture, the flooring, even some tips to get you noticed. They'll teach you the difference between renting and buying. They're based right here, again, like I said, in Fort Lauderdale. So schedule a free consultation, mention 5 Reasons, get your free booth rendering, 954-791-8882, 954-791-8882, everythingtradeshows.com. They're run by a guy named Chris Chase, who's a big friend of the network here and a big Miami sports fan. So reach out, 954-791-8882, everythingtradeshows.com. All right, let's get to the concerns. There are some Heat fans that are not thrilled. And I understand that, we've talked so much on these streams. when the DeRozan possibility came up that we first reported, this always happens. When you don't get everything that's reported, you forget what you did get, right? Like they just got the premium free agent point guard. But their Heat fans are not happy about it because they haven't landed another star at this point. And B, they've gotten older. I mean, they went from Dragic to Lowry and they got older. PJ Tucker from Ariza, that doesn't make them younger. I mean, they've essentially, at those two spots, they've stayed at roughly, again, the same age. They've added, they brought back another vet in Dedmon. They are, they may be letting Kendrick Nunn, who's one of their sort of, youngish type players go. And I think there are people who would look at this roster and say a couple of things, okay? Say, this is a great roster that Pat's constructing for the 90s. With a little bit of a touch of still playing Bam at the center, which in the old days, Bam might have been a 3 for Pat, like Anthony Mason was, but that they're going to be slow, that because they're a little bit old, and they're going to have they still don't really have 3-level scoring like we've talked about that they need. Address it. I'll start with you, Alex.
Well, look, there's definitely concerns, but to me, the concerns don't even come close to the positives. Like, you're right, they're old, but also to your point as well, not that much older than they were this past season, except just a lot better at those positions that they were already kind of old at, right? And understanding that Goran and Kyle are the same age, the difference is the context. Goran just came off a season where he had a extremely short turnaround, had injuries at the end of the bubble, had injuries throughout the season, never really got back to himself. Played pretty much like every chance he got when he wasn't hurt. Whereas Kyle Lowry, it's kind of been implied by a lot of different places that him and the Raptors, it's almost like they kind of took a year off. Like he was not playing a lot. He's a lot fresher than Goran is, and also a lot better player at this stage. And look, we are definitely not trying to talk down on Goran today. Goran, I really do believe that his jersey should be hung up in the rafters there. It's bittersweet, like you said, to have to see him go. I think it would have been ideal for him to stay here. And the fact, and I know you brought this up a bunch of times, but the fact that he gets traded for Kyle Lowry of all people with their, the history that they have. And then another issue, you go from Ariza to PJ Tucker, the two guys from those Rockets teams. Like, I just think they got better at everything they needed today. Right. And I disagree with the idea that they didn't get better with 3-level scoring, because I do think Kyle Lowry checks that box off. Now, he isn't, Zach LaVine. He's not Bradley Beal, but he absolutely checks off the box of a 3-level scorer because he's a pull-up shooter from 3. He can shoot from the mid-range, still gets to the rim, and still gets to the free throw line. Besides the fact that he's a great defender, still a great playmaker. He's not going to get you 25 a game, but I mean, he's going to get you 17 easily. He could do more than that whenever you need him to. He's going to take the pressure off of Jimmy and Bam. He's going to make life easier for everybody on that team. Like, I just think we need to stop overthinking things sometimes when it comes to these guys that the organization and kind of everybody involved are so sold on. Just, he was the best free agent out there for a reason.
Yeah. And like, listen, this DeRozan stuff, it's best case scenario. And it's going to be difficult to pull off. It's still possible, but obviously it's going to be difficult. But just overall, let's think of it this way. At the deadline, there was talk of, was Duncan Robinson going to be included? Was Tyler Hero going to be included in trades for for Kyle Lowry? They stuck to their guns and they got to this offseason, and now both of those players are still on the roster. So still the young player that they kind of have thought of as the asset that could maybe get them in conversations along with other stuff. Tyler Hero, he's still here. Kyle Lowry is as well. So to me, like, that's a win in itself. And then PJ Tucker, he just fits the mold. So, and Dewayne Dedmon, like you tweeted it, Ethan, like he fits the mold as well. Like, we just need a James Johnson reunion, and this team is set to go from the toughness perspective.
Yeah, I mean, Dewayne Dedmon at times at the end of last year seemed to be the only one who cared. I honestly, like, and I'm not saying that. I just think there was a frustration level with Jimmy that he had, and also obviously we know Bam was fighting himself. And you know,
They seem to
Dragic
have
always
just a whole lot of baggage from the bubble, right? That Dedmon didn't have to go through. It was like that's the difference between Dedmon and them, right? Like that energy level was just completely different by the end of the season. I think that's a great point.
Yeah, and now he comes in with the training camp where he can fully acclimate, and now maybe they can actually play him with Bam Adebayo, which is one of the things that we wanted to look at because I don't think that was going to happen with Precious and Bam this year. All right, we're gonna go forward a little bit here. We don't want to go too far because again, by the time you listen to this, things may change. But we'll give you a few predictions as we go. Before we do, tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. It's our friend Mark Brown. Again, another person who's local right here in North Lauderdale, just north of Cypress Creek Road off of Andrews. You can find him at markbrownpa.com. That's marcbrownpa.com. 954-566-5678. That's 954-566-5678. Why would you reach out to him? Well, if you need estate planning, he's the person to go to if you're young with a family. You got to meet with him so you can set up plans for your kids. If anything unfortunate happens, I'm going to do that because I've got a daughter. I want to make sure that she's taken care of, and I trust Mark. So I'm going to reach out to Mark. Mark has a small firm. It allows him to be focused on his clients, but he remains always available. Also, he does a ton of real estate stuff with his title company right there in-house. So they're experts in handling land or property assets. Also, we can do his title for you. He's doing that for me right now, actually. So reach out to Mark, markbrownpa.com, MARC brownpa.com, 954-566-5678. And as we come back, some more news here. Max Strus returning to the Miami Heat on a 2-year deal. We've talked about him as somebody
the one Woj got.
I think so. The one that Woj got. I'm not going to comment here on that kind of stuff. You know my feelings off air. But you're baiting me at this point in like the 6th hour of our programming to start going after. I'm not going to do it. Sorry. But Strus comes back, and we know that the Heat value him. They like him. They think that he has more to him than just shooting, that he can be kind of a bulky but somewhat mobile defender to a certain degree, a little bit more than he was. And was able to show last year, but also he's got some athleticism. We saw that last year with the dunks, and they do think that he can be a plus shooter. Also, I can tell you, Jimmy's fond of him. Jimmy likes him personally, and Jimmy likes him as a player, and not just because he was the guy who carried Jimmy's stuff off the bus all year long. So Max Strus is back, so another piece that you can see maybe getting elevated to more playing time this year. As we close tonight, and we are going to close because, again, we want to get this thing going here. But the latest on DeMar DeRozan is this, that we know. Okay. And again, Adam Barai has been part of our reporting pretty much all day long and pretty much all week long, all month long, all year long. DeRozan is still out there. That alone, when you have a capologist like Andy Ellisberg, gives you some hope that there's a possibility here for something. We know that Chicago was in on him. We also know that Chicago's added Lonzo Ball. They've made they've made their own sort of flurry of moves. We know that Atlanta was a possibility. They're dealing with the John Collins situation. We know New Orleans is doing some weird things. They just gave up a first-round pick for Devontae Graham. They brought in Thomas Satoransky to be the point guard to play with Zion. Zion, I think, is probably ticketed for South Beach in about 3 years, whenever that contract is up. We'll see. But we should start those shirts
accurately.
Aggregate accurately. We should get the t-shirts going for that. We'll sell some of those. Was that Zion 2024?
We can't jinx it again.
But Zion Bam, Zion KZ. We'll do some of those t-shirts. But by the way, KZ's still on the roster. We haven't discussed that much, but he is still on the roster. But DeRozan's still out there now. We don't think this is likely at this point, but we know that Miami has been in on it. We know that they're interested in doing it. We know that if anybody could convince DeMar DeRozan to take a lot less money, it would be his best friend to the NBA, Kyle Lowry, along with Jimmy Butler. But Greg, just before we close here, what is the possible path? How could they do it with what's still on the roster, which includes Iguodala's bird rights, Oladipo's bird rights, right? Like,
I mean, and Kendrick Nunn as well.
Right.
So essentially, it would send them into the luxury tax, so they have to be comfortable with that. And San Antonio has to be interested in one of those guys, and they can essentially figure out something to get a deal done. It wouldn't be at a very high number that maybe DeRozan was initially looking at, but if he's willing to take less, that's the path still. But it's still, to me, the moment that they took that large portion of the mid-level and gave it to PJ Tucker, it to me signaled that the DeMar stuff is going to be or either a really creative bow tied on this free agency period that we're going to really, really look back on and say, wow, Andy really, was on his game. Or you know what, like it's still going to be successful, but that's just going to be one that may slip through the cracks.
Yeah, and the one thing I want to say about DeMar DeRozan, if you could find a way to get DeMar DeRozan to take less money, you do it. I don't care about the spacing. I really don't. I mean, you figure out a way to make that work. He can be a very high level 6 man, I believe, if you actually needed to do that. Not that that's where I think he would be.
The fact that you could keep him and still not trade Duncan to San Antonio or Tyler, that's a slam dunk.
I know the one thing that people are going to say before we close, we predicted Tyler 75% chance or better of getting
maybe
traded.
He does get traded, Ethan.
What's that?
Night one.
Maybe Tyler does get traded.
Well, I mean, that's a possibility. And it's also possible that the 25% or less could have come through and we could see him enter the season with the Heat and they see where it goes. And then ultimately, maybe he, again, like you said, becomes the chip that is traded for the bigger piece. I think that this is a short-term play for the Heat, but it's also a longer-term play. The short-term play is you kept Bam and Jimmy as your cornerstones. You're going to give them the best chance to be successful in the near term with a guy like Kyle Lowry, who, as we say, is a ceiling raiser and a floor raiser. So you're doing that, but you have kept yourself somewhat. I know the Jimmy contract eventually is going to take you out of it with the Bam contract, but for now, there's some flexibility if you can hold on to Hero where you may be able to get a bigger piece down the road for him, or maybe he just blossoms. Who knows?
with a
full off season.
He's going to thrive, man. Like Lowry is going to make things easier for everybody, including Tyler Hero. Like it's really a hand in glove fit for like all those reasons, man. Tyler, he's going to get so many easy shots, man. I don't know. I think at this point I'm against trading him just because I don't know who you're going to get that's actually worth it.
I have a great reason for us to close, and that is that it is being reported that the Sixers tried to reach out to Dewayne Dedmon this evening, but he declined.
I mean,
perfect.
I said they've had to find a way to keep him. He was the most Heat culture person on the floor in the playoffs. Okay, that's all I'm saying. Okay,
Heat won today. The Mavs lost. The Sixers lost. I mean, awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network.